Fantasy fanfiction. Fairy tale world. Inherit the sin of pride at the beginning. Chapter 31. Pity. Looking at Rhodes's leaving figure, a flash of regret flashed across the cardinal's face. A human with divine power if he joins their holy church. The Lord's light will surely shine in more places. The sharp edge of the Judge Legion will surely set foot on the powerful Eastern kingdoms again. Your Majesty, Bishop, would it be too offensive to say such words to a god-level existence? Van Helsing frowned, feeling that the cardinal was really brave. Which god-level existence is not an existence with eyes higher than the top? Let a powerful being with divine power believe in the Lord of Light. It is like subjecting one king to another. This in itself is a blasphemy. They were not easily crushed to death by this god, probably because the other party was in a good mood. What do you know? The cardinal glanced at Van Helsing. We are both gods, and there are strengths and weaknesses. Even among the gods, my lord is the most powerful true god. And, the cardinal lowered his gaze. There has been no new god born in this world for thousands of years. Do you know why? Van Helsing frowned and thought for a while, then asked with some uncertainty. Is it because of faith? Yes, faith. The cardinal nodded. The faith of all living beings is the most mysterious power in the world. Only with enough faith can we hold the throne high, ignite the divine fire, and become a true god with power. Without enough faith, a demigod is already the limit. In essence, he can only be regarded as a false god. Belonging to the same category of gods, the difference between false gods and true gods is faith and power. Without enough faith to gather power, it means that true immortality and eternity cannot be achieved. The life of the true God has no end, and his soul and divine kingdom hang in the star realm like stars, illuminating the entire world with his radiance. It is an eternal existence. Even if you are killed by a blasphemer, as long as the power of faith is not extinguished, you can be reborn in the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is a kingdom formed by the condensed power of gods. Standing in the kingdom of God, even if he encounters a god stronger than himself, he cannot defeat himself. And false gods, even if they are more powerful than gods, will die one day. The souls of unbelievers are not even qualified for reincarnation, and will only be nailed to the wall of wailing by the god of death in the kingdom of death. Most of the faith of the Shinra Empire has been put into my lord's possession. The false gods want to become true gods. Only by becoming my lord's believers can they receive the Lord's gift and ascend to the kingdom of heaven. There was a look of arrogance in the cardinal's eyes. In the entire northern kingdoms, only the Holy Church has enough faith to create the true God. No matter how powerful this demigod is, as long as he wants to take that step, he is destined to be unable to bypass the Holy Church. Waiting for his life and soul to come to an end. The only way to exalt the kingdom of God and become eternal is to become a believer in the God of glory. Besides the true God, death is the eternal destination. Only devout believers like them can enter the kingdom of the Lord after death. Enjoy endless happiness. Why do you look so unhappy? Yulia looked at Rhodes a little strangely. I met a group of mentally ill guys on the road and asked me to believe in some glorious god. Rhodes pouted. He even killed the evil god. He is a god himself, so why do he need to trust others? Saying this, your brain is somewhat seriously ill. I really don't know how such an old guy with a brain problem got into the position of a cardinal. If the Holy Church is full of such mindless arrogant fools, take date pills. Judge of the Holy Church. Yulia's face was full of surprise. This is the highest level of the Holy Church, second only to the Pope. In charge of the Judge Legion among the three legions. If you want to become a true god, there is no way around the Holy Church. To become a true god, you need a lot of faith, and most of the faith in the northern countries has been monopolized by the Holy Church. Yulia had a look of gloating on her face. You shouldn't refuse. Of course, with your strength, if you want to take this position, you can do it at any time. However, you will have to ask the Pope yourself when the time comes. Although I was rejected once. However, the Pope still has to give the face of a top demigod. Even the superior being in the star realm cannot refuse a believer who has the qualifications to become a god. Is there such a thing? Rhodes was slightly stunned. No wonder the cardinal seemed to be thinking without thinking when he spoke. It turns out that the Holy Church holds the path to becoming a god. If you want to become a god, you must have enough faith. As the largest faith group in the northern countries, the Holy Church believes in the existence of powerful divine power such as the God of Glory. Only they have the ability to create gods. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant. You're just a god, there's no need to go to such trouble. Rhodes shook his head, not taking this matter to heart at all. Any external force will have inevitable flaws. Although becoming a god through the faith of believers is quick and effective, it will also be hindered by believers in the future. If a large number of believers die and perish, then the God of faith will also be pulled down from his throne by the power of resentment of the believers. Even if he becomes a god, he is still the kind of true God who relies on his own power to lift the kingdom of God. If you want to become a god, you have to beg for external power. Then this god is not appropriate. Thinking about the worst, even if he really couldn't become a god without faith, he could still grab it. As long as he is strong enough. After destroying the Church of the God of Glory, it would not be impossible to replace it with his Church of the Sun God. Moreover, he has a system in place, and he might sign in and become a god one day. Pack your bags, it's time to hit the road. Rhodes shouted. Originally I just wanted to stay in the castle for one day and then leave, but my plan couldn't keep up with the change. Evil gods, devils, murderers. In just 2 or 3 days, I experienced a thrill that most people could never imagine in their lives. Now that Earl Haman is dead, even the bloodline clans are dead. All flesh and soul were sacrificed to the evil god, and even the gods could not save them. His territory will naturally be taken over by other nobles. Who the new lord is and what kind of chaos he will cause has nothing to do with him. He was just a passerby passing by. A group of people packed their luggage and left the castle in a carriage. Seeing the chaos in the city, Rhodes, who was sitting outside the carriage with one leg draped over the outside of the carriage, couldn't help but sigh. So what if the gods are above us? They can't save this chaotic world. Believe in God. It's better to believe that he is useful. Without the gods, maybe these ordinary people would live better. Why is a demigod traveling in a carriage like this? In the carriage, a group of people were crowded together. With a jolt, Yulia's sexy body fell directly on Rhodes. He casually chatted and pinched his perky buttocks, eliciting a pair of charming eye rolls. Yulia secretly grinded her teeth. If she couldn't beat this guy, she would have to burn the source of this sin with fire because of her violent temper. Who is she? Legendary Archmage, Fire Queen Yulia. In the imperial capital, those who dared to blaspheme her with their eyes would almost always end up like this. When you do something, the most important thing is not the result, but the scenery you enjoy during the process. Rhodes, wrapped in beauty, looked outside leisurely. The scenery like a revolving lantern passed before my eyes. With his speed, if he was really in a hurry, he could reach his destination in a day or two. But it's not necessary. How is the strength of the Holy Church? Rhodes asked suddenly curiously. As the largest church in the northern countries, the strength of the Holy Church is probably not weak. However, he has no idea how strong it is. The 12 cardinals are all legendary powerhouses, and the leaders of the 3 major institutions are all saint-level powers. The Pope's strength is said to have reached the level of a demigod. If the God of Glory sends down his grace, he is expected to become a true god. This is just the apparent strength. Yulia said casually. The Holy Church has occupied the northern kingdoms for thousands of years. Statues of the God of Glory stand almost everywhere in the northern kingdoms, large and small. There are hundreds of millions of believers. Even if a legend appears among 10 million people, that is an exaggerated number. Only one demigod. Rhodes clicked his tongue. He thought that such a big church would have to have at least 3 or 5 demigods. It seems that the demigod's gold content is greater than he imagined. What are you thinking about? Yulia looked helpless. Could it be that this guy really thought that the demigod was just a weed on the street? Can you meet him casually? Which demigod is not a strong man who crawled out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood? Everyone has the qualifications to become a god. It would take decades or even hundreds of years for such a powerful existence to appear in the northern countries. Throughout the thousands of years of history of the Holy Church, the number of semi-god level popes has been handful. The current pope is the most powerful person who has the honor of being the first person in the Shinra Empire and the strongest person in the Northern Territory. Recognized as the strongest person in the Northern Territory. Do I admit it? Rhodes pouted. This title might have been true before. Now that he is here, there is no place for that old boy like the Pope. If you feel uncomfortable, you can challenge the Pope. I have also been unhappy with that bumbling old guy for a long time. He fools others with his kind appearance every day. Who doesn't know that he used to be the preceptor of the church's precept's office? Not even 10,000 but 8,000 heretics died at his hands. Now that he is the Pope, he wants to clear his name. How can it be so cheap? Yulia was frantically making fire beside her, looking like she was watching the fun and not afraid of the big deal. Although she was deliberately stirring up trouble, she still had a lot of confidence in Rhodes. After all, if he could kill the evil god, this guy might be even stronger than that old guy, the Pope. However, that old boy, the Pope, is blessed with artifacts and divine power given by the God of glory, and his combat power is not inferior to that of a true god with weak divine power. It's almost like a 50-50 fight. If you say one more word, do you believe I can hang you on the roof of the car? Rhodes glanced at her faintly. He has no interest at all in being the strongest person in the Northern Territory. And, when does the strong need to challenge the weak to prove their strength? If he wanted to challenge him, it was the old boy Pope who challenged him. Rhodes glanced at the sky. With his strength, it would be difficult to overthrow the gods. However, since he is invincible under the gods, it should be relatively safe. The strongest one under the starry sky. This name seems pretty good. Rhodes rubbed his chin, but wanted others to recognize the title. We need to beat up all the famous strong men first. Who dares to claim to be invincible? Who dares to claim to be invincible? When no one respects him, he will naturally be the strongest. It was getting dark. A horse-drawn carriage, no, rather a dog cart, was driving on the muddy path. If you go further, you will reach the Forest of Tranquility. Yulia sat outside the carriage and pointed to a huge forest in front of her. Even though they are far apart, you can still faintly see the vast green forest and tall trees. There are many powerful monsters living in the Forest of Silence. It is said that there are also elves. I don't know whether this is true or false. However, when I passed by there a few times, I did feel a magic power comparable to that of a strong man in the Holy Realm. Yulia's tone was serious. The terrain in the Forest of Tranquility is complex, and it is difficult for carriages to pass through it. If you are not in a hurry, we can take a detour. Rhodes frowned. We were delayed for 2 days in Earl Haemon's territory. If we took a long detour, we might not be able to make enough time. If we take a detour, how long will it take? If we take a detour, we need to walk an extra week. A week? Too long. Rhodes gave up his plan to take a detour. Go directly through the Forest of Tranquility and I will open a path. The detour is too troublesome, so just push all the way through. It doesn't matter if he is really in trouble, he will take action. Yulia retorted speechlessly. If you have the strength, you can really do whatever you want. For a demigod with divine combat power, there are only places in this world that he wants to go and places that he doesn't want to go to. A quiet forest that seemed quite dangerous to her. In this guy's eyes, it's probably just like his own back garden, he can go there whenever he wants. 10 minutes later, a huge castle appeared in front of us. There is only a small plain between the castle and the forest, and a turbulent moat. This is the territory of Earl Francis, the Kingdom of Francis. Seeing the question in Rhodes' eyes, Yulia explained helplessly. This Earl Francis is also a legend. It is said that he was once a commoner. He married the princess because he completed the impossible reward issued by the previous earl. After the earl died, he took over and became the new earl. Diosi counterattacks the king, a standard heroic hero. Rhodes lamented that in this world with strict class order, it is understandably difficult to transform from a commoner to a noble. But this guy did it. This life experience is even more legendary than legend. Speaking of which, the Forest of Tranquility was not dangerous in the past, nor was it so exclusive to outsiders. However, I don't know what stupid thing this count did. After he came to power, he angered the owner of the Forest of Tranquility. More than 10 years ago, the entire Forest of Tranquility was blocked by a powerful magic. Ordinary people will be attacked by monsters in the forest even if they don't go in. Yulia continued. So, now the residents in the castle have to travel several miles if they want to chop some wood to make a fire. Is there such a thing? Rhodes raised a brow and rubbed his chin. I always feel like it's full of stories. This curiosity came up immediately. Don't go into the forest today. Let's take a look at the territory of this legendary earl. Since we plan to conquer the entire Forest of Tranquility, it is of course best to wait until noon. After all, the opponent is also a sanctuary-level existence. A little miscellaneous fish who is not in the legendary realm like Yulia should not be underestimated. The Holy Realm is a higher level than the legend. If you want to step into the legendary realm, you need to master the power of laws more powerful than magic. The Holy Domain is based on laws and has initially begun to touch the power of rules. Those who can step into this field are the handful of geniuses at the top of the pyramid of various races and professions. It is synonymous with strength and talent. Stepping into this realm means reaching the ultimate level of a mortal and possessing the qualifications to peek into the personality of gods. As for demigods, they are no longer mortals in essence. Demigods control the power of rules, except that they do not condense the divine personality, ignite the divine fire, and exalt the divine kingdom. The essence of power is no different from that of gods. Can be considered a slightly weaker deity. If a mage steps into the holy realm, he is qualified to call himself a Dharma saint. Swordsmen can call themselves sword masters in the same way. In the entire northern kingdoms, the number of strong men in the holy domain will not exceed double digits. Of course, the strong men in the sanctuary have a long lifespan and are more terrifying than most immortal magical creatures. Counting those powerful men from the sanctuary who have disappeared, the real number will definitely be higher. Facing a powerful existence of this level, one should be cautious. To avoid capsizing in the gutter, please register when entering the city. Pay the entrance fee. The carriage was stopped by soldiers before entering the city. Yulia, who was sitting outside the carriage, reached out and waved. A violent burst of flames instantly knocked back the two soldiers. It turns out to be the master mage. Offended, the two soldiers guarding the gate were startled and moved out of the way. You are really arrogant. The carriage swaggered into the castle gate. Rhodes clicked his tongue and looked at Yulia in surprise. He has been treating Yulia as a free tool for the past 2 days. I almost forgot, this is a genuine legendary mage. Isn't this what it should be? Yulia glanced at him strangely. The status of a legendary mage is nobler than that of most nobles. No matter where you go, the treatment is at least comparable to that of nobles above Duke. That is, in this remote territory, no one knows her. If someone dared to stop her car in the imperial capital, she would set the two soldiers on fire and no one would say anything. The atmosphere isn't quite right. As the carriage drove into the castle, everything in front of them was shrouded in dark gray. Dark gray floor, dark gray wall tiles. Darkness and gloom seemed to be the only theme of this castle. Pedestrians came and went in a hurry on the road, and soldiers patrolled the streets from time to time. Inside the blacksmith shop, the lights are brightly lit. The entire castle felt like the calm before the storm. It looks like we are going to war with someone. However, who can the Francis kingdom go to war with? The nobles who also belong to the Shinra Empire must not start wars with each other at will. Otherwise, they will be sanctioned by the empire. Since it is not a fight between nobles, there seems to be only one possibility. Count Francis wants to fight the Forest of Silence. The guy who doesn't know how to live or die. Yulia, who was teaching Brittany the basics of magic, snorted slightly irritably. His eyes were filled with unspeakable sarcasm. Just a county wants to start a war with the Forest of Tranquility. This Earl Francis, I'm afraid there's something wrong with his brain. A small county with a population of tens of thousands at most. Even if the military force is developed militaristically, it will only have a few thousand soldiers at most. With this level of troops, not to mention fighting against the strong men of the sanctuary, even a legendary mage can easily destroy this castle. Like her, if you give her enough time to cast a spell. A fire-forbidden spell can wipe this castle from the world. Rhodes nodded noncommittally. A strong person in the Holy Realm may not have any weaknesses. If Count Francis goes to war with the Forest of Tranquility, he must have found a way to restrain the sacred monster from the Forest of Tranquility. Let's find a place to stay first. The carriage drove around and stopped in front of a relatively good hotel. Rhodes opened 3 rooms. Euphemia's demonic energy has not yet been completely removed, so naturally he and Euphemia are in the same room. Although it will consume his energy, she is his maid after all, and as the master, he can only bear this important responsibility. Fleur and Annie share a room. Yulia and Brittany share a room. Master, thank you for your hard work. Entering the room, Euphemia naturally sat on the bed, waiting for Rhodes to help her purify the demonic energy. Who made me your master? Rhodes sighed and stepped forward to purify Euphemia of the demonic energy. Accompanied by the infusion of holy water condensed from the pure power of the sun. Euphemia arched her body upwards, her tense body trembled, and she roared with feeble pain. Wisps of demonic energy emanated from his body. A few more times will be enough. Rhodes wiped the cold sweat from his head. Euphemia's body has gradually become accustomed to the demonic energy purification ritual, and it is increasingly difficult to complete a demonic energy purification ritual. Fortunately, his power of the sun is sufficient, otherwise he really wouldn't be able to do it. Bang bang bang. A crisp knock on the door suddenly sounded. Who will come over this late at night? Rhodes frowned, put on a coat and opened the door. Outside the door, an expressionless girl stood quietly. Fleur. Is something wrong? Rhodes was a little surprised. Why was this kid sneaking here without sleeping in the middle of the night? I seem to be thinking about what my master thinks about and can't sleep. Fleur lowered her head and twirled her fingers in her hands. As he spoke, he gave Rhodes a charming look. Rhodes frowned and saw an indescribable look of spring on the girl's face. That charming expression was so charming to the core. Due to Fleur's 3-no character, there is basically no second expression on her face. Naturally, only Fleur's alter ego could make such an expression. Why did you run out? Hey, why did the master say that? If you stay in that dark place for a long time, you should come out and take a breath. Fleur bit her finger gently and blinked slightly from the corner of her eyes. Looking at Rhodes innocently. Don't master want to do something between master and slave with your little slave girl? The devil's horns on Fleur's head grew rapidly, and her barren body became plump and attractive at a speed visible to the naked eye. This dress is a bit too small. Pulling on her long skirt, succubus Fleur complained with a face full of complaints. His misty eyes looked at Rhodes. Master, look, I also have demonic energy on my body. What should I do? Rhodes raised his eyebrows, and his heartbeat seemed to suddenly stop for a moment. He sighed helplessly. It looks like I have to work overtime to exorcise demons again. Performed 2 exorcisms in one day. It's a big burden on the body. However, fortunately, the results are still good. Fleur, who is completely succubus, was purified again and again with the violent thorns of the sun. Finally, under the baptism of holy water, he was driven back with satisfaction. Real demons are indeed more difficult to deal with than demonic pollution. Rhodes breathed a sigh of relief. It feels like manual work has turned into a fully automated machine. Totally tireless fanaticism. It is difficult for a professional exorcist like him to deal with it. The succubus is indeed a strange creature of the demon clan. Seeing that the sky was getting brighter, Rhodes lost interest in sleeping. Sign in. Open black lens bracket ding. Sign in successfully. Close black lens bracket. Get rewards, 10 commandments. The magic of true commandments. Critical breakthrough. Critical breakthrough. Use magic power to push physical capabilities to the limit. In critical breakthrough state, the power will be increased by 1.1 to 10 times according to the intensity of magic power. Critical breakthrough. The effect of this magic is quite strong. Use magic power to strengthen your body and convert magic power into physical strength. The stronger the magic power, the greater the limit it can withstand, and the higher the upper limit of power improvement. Theoretically, as long as his magic power and physical endurance are strong enough, he can even increase his physical strength to a peak of 10 times his basic strength. And there's no risk of his critical breakthrough getting out of hand. Rhodes changed his clothes and left the hotel. Skillfully came to a tavern. The atmosphere in the castle is a bit weird, something must be happening. Since we are looking for information, the pub is of course the best place. The Count is really crazy, he actually wants to start a war with those monsters in the forest. That banshee in the forest is not that easy to deal with. As soon as I walked into the tavern, I heard a burst of indignant discussion. A few civilians dressed in ordinary clothes discussed in a low voice. I don't know how the Count offended the owner of the silent forest. The entire forest was shrouded in a layer of sharp thorns. Even to cut firewood, he had to run to the forest several kilometers away. I heard that our lord the Earl was once in love with the banshee in the forest. Later, in order to please the Earl cut off the wings of the banshee while she was sleeping, so that he could have the opportunity to marry the princess. Is this happening? The people at the tables next to him suddenly showed interested expressions. Facts have proven that eating melon and gossiping are universal habits no matter which world we are in. That's still false. My cousin is a palace guard. He heard with his own ears that the Count and the Countess were quarreling because of the owner of the silent forest. Even so, why does the Earl still make so many weapons to start a war in the silent forest? Some people were puzzled. No matter how you look at it, it is a poignant love story between a heartless man and a kind-hearted witch. As a result, the unscrupulous man will try his best to kill them all. Isn't this a bit too animalistic? Have you ever heard of what happened 16 years ago? 16 years ago, when the princess was born. Yes, on the day the princess was born, the owner of the silent forest came uninvited and imposed a cruel curse on the princess. When the princess turns 16, she will fall into an eternal sleep just because she touches the spindle. When you said that, I seemed to remember that there was such a thing. Rhodes, who was eavesdropping nearby, raised his eyebrows. Banshee, king, princess, sleep, spindle. Isn't this the story of Sleeping Beauty? Is it such a coincidence? He could guess the next plot development without even thinking about it. Nothing more than a passionate kiss can save the princess. And when the princess secretly left the castle to play in the forest, she happened to meet a handsome Prince Charming. The prince happened to like the beautiful and generous princess. In the end, the curse was lifted, and the princess and the prince happily came together and lived a story without shame. Very old-fashioned plot. Anyway, he felt it was very illogical. A powerful banshee cursed the princess, why did she leave a way to lift the curse? Besides, isn't it a bit perfunctory to believe that a kiss can break the spell? Don't tell him any bullshit about the power of love. No matter how powerful love is, can it break the spell cast by a sanctuary-level banshee? I heard that if you want to lift the curse cast by the banshee, you need to find a brave man who is stronger than the banshee and have sex with the princess, and use powerful magic to purify the curse from the princess. That's right, in order to select powerful brave men, the Earl also set up 3 difficult tests. Only those who pass these tests are qualified to become the brave men who rescue the princess. He will be the husband of the princess and the future king of the Kingdom of Francis. Are you kidding me? Rhodes was stunned for a moment, with an incredible expression on his face. The incredibly powerful hero and the princess have sex. Are you sure this is a serious way to save the princess? It's a pity that no one has been able to pass these 3 tests for such a long time. The Earl can only seek the second way, to kill the banshee and break the curse. I see, they say banshees are afraid of iron weapons, but can ordinary iron weapons really kill such a powerful banshee? It would be great if I had this strength, Earl. I could reach the sky in 1 step. A few drunkards were drinking with longing on their faces. Beautiful princess, powerful banshee, defeat the banshee and save the princess. From then on, he inherited the title of Earl and reached the pinnacle of his life. This is simply the plot of a brave adventure storybook. Unfortunately, the banshee in the forest is too powerful. Just think about this kind of thing. Rhodes was in a mixed mood and didn't even know how he left the tavern. Why did the beautiful and innocent fairy tale in his mind suddenly develop in an adult direction? Although, this result seems more reasonable. But is the way to break the curse a bit too tricky? It is difficult to doubt that the banshee was not deliberately taking revenge on the Earl. Give you hope and then make you despair. Even if hope is really found, the daughter she loves most will become someone else. This kind of punishment is simply not too painful for a father. Whether the spell is lifted or the spell is not lifted, I'm afraid it's not a good result for the Count. Although I feel that the development of this plot is a bit broken, but this is Sleeping Beauty, Rhodes muttered quietly. The longed-for storyline in fairy tales is really happening before your eyes. It is impossible to say that there is no idea in mind. Well, it's not because of coveting beauty. It is purely a selfless and dedicated heart that wants to save the innocent princess. Just like when he helped others purify the evil spirit, he had the same mentality of physically giving and cutting off his flesh to feed the eagles. He just couldn't bear to see a princess with a bright future and youth just wither away. That's right. This is merit. Since ancient times, when it comes to deeds, no one is perfect. It doesn't matter what the reason is for saving the princess. What matters is whether the consequences of doing so are good or bad. If the result is good, then what he did is a good deed. 3 tests, I don't know what they are. The return rate for rescuing the princess is as high as 1000%. Not only can you get a beautiful and caring princess, but you can also inherit the family property and become the owner of this castle. And a hereditary earldom. He suddenly became a high-ranking aristocrat. Such a huge temptation will naturally attract countless brave men to defeat the banshee and save the princess. However, for more than 10 years, no one has passed the first test. You can imagine how difficult these 3 tests are. Rhodes is quite interested in these 3 tests. He likes to challenge the impossible. Not to mention, the reward for the challenge is a living princess. 3 challenges, the first one is posted at the entrance to the castle. Only if the challenge passes the first test, can you enter the palace to meet the count and get the second test. Rhodes rode his dog to the city gate and looked at the notice posted on the inside of the castle gate. The first test is to eradicate the jackal camp at the gold mine 10 kilometers away, kill the jackal leader of the jackal camp, and take its head to the palace to obtain the second test. This count has something. Rhodes rubbed his chin, feeling that this count was really good at killing people with a knife. 10 kilometers away from the kingdom of Francis, there is a medium-sized gold mine. But the gold mine is occupied by a group of jackals. Even a 3-year-old child knows how valuable a gold mine is. If it could be fully excavated, Francis would become the most prosperous kingdom in the vicinity. Even Count Francis did not have no chance to go further. Unfortunately, this gold mine is occupied by a group of gnolls. Jackals are a branch of orcs, monsters belonging to the evil camp. Cruel and cunning in nature, they like to appear in groups. Jackals are physically stronger than humans, and their speed and strength far exceed that of ordinary soldiers. Moreover, their favorite prey is weak creatures like humans. The kingdom of Francis probably gets beaten up a lot by these jackals on weekdays. As for cleaning up, that would be a huge price to pay. There are at least 1,000 jackals in a jackal camp. With the strength of the Francis kingdom, even if this gnoll camp can be eradicated, it will still be broken. Now, this Earl Francis has made a good calculation. Just treat the gnoll camp as a test. As long as someone accepts this reward, it will be a good thing for the Earl regardless of whether he can pass the test or not. The kingdom of Francis is the only county nearby. Without the obstruction of this jackal camp, the gold mine would have become the possession of the kingdom of Francis. Therefore, the biggest hidden beneficiary of eradicating this jackal camp is Count Francis. Even if the gnoll camp is not eradicated, those cannon fodder warriors who are willing to die can at least consume the gnoll's vitality. Without sending a single soldier, they used those brave men who were prostitutes for free to consume the strength of the jackal camp. No matter how you think about it, it's a guaranteed profit. More importantly, in the name of a test, this task does not mention any rewards at all. Even if someone risked his life to complete this task, he would be shocked to find that there is still a more difficult task waiting for him. Giving up on the second test means that all previous efforts have been in vain. As for the gold mine, that is something within the territory of Earl Francis. What does it have to do with you, a foreign brave? Without paying any price, you become the big winner in the end. The Count's calculation was quite good. Mortal wisdom. Rhodes shook his head and tore off the notice. I accepted this mission. The 2 guards at the door were slightly stunned, obviously not expecting a fool to take this test that no one had completed for more than 10 years. Rhodes walked out of the castle and strode towards the direction of the gnoll camp. After the 2 guards were stunned for a moment, one of them entered the castle directly and ran towards the palace. Someone has accepted the Earl's test, which is a big deal. The wind howls. Rhodes sat cross-legged on the back of the big dog, and in his sight, all the scenery flashed by frame like a film. Without the drag of the carriage, the speed of the treasure house guards was quite astonishing. The moment he got down on all fours, he pounced like a cheetah. That terrifying explosive power only left behind a series of slowly disappearing afterimages. In just a few minutes, a huge camp appeared in front of us. The dilapidated camp is filled with a primitive and barbaric atmosphere. The sound of banging came from the camp. There were vaguely visible figures covered in hair, walking back and forth in the camp. Outside the camp, gnawed bones were randomly discarded on the ground. There are bones of beasts and human skulls. Quite a lot of them. Since it is a man-eating beast, there is no psychological burden. Rhodes stretched his muscles and jumped off the dog's back. There was a look of indifference on his calm face. The weak eat the strong, and the fittest survive. Since these jackals regard humans as food, he won't have any psychological burden when he goes on a killing spree. My time is quite precious, so I'd better make a quick decision. Looking at the sun rising slowly on the edge of the sky, Rhodes' body glowed with golden light. It's like a sun falling into the world, emitting endless light and heat. The sun without mercy. Boom! A bright ray of light gathered at the fingertips and fell into the center of the camp. With the explosion, scorching flames engulfed the entire Null camp. Beast-like roars and howls were heard endlessly. Rhodes stepped into the scorching flames and walked into the Null camp. Throw small groups of sons into the mines. As the last gold mine was swallowed up by flames, the Nulls in the entire camp had been almost wiped out. You should be the leader of this camp. Rhodes lowered his head and looked down at the only remaining jackal. The burnt body and the cruel eyes showed fear and hatred. It's okay to hate. I killed your people, and I will confess to this crime. Rhodes murmured under his breath. There was only a heart-stopping indifference on his expressionless face. So, remember this face. In the next life, stay away from anyone you see. Call. A flame spear gathered together and pierced the heart of the jackal leader. Rhodes lifted the Null leader's body. With a swing of the divine axe, an inhuman head rolled to the ground. The jackal camp was destroyed. Has anyone accepted the reward? In the palace, Earl Francis, who was sitting high on the throne, frowned slightly. I didn't take this little thing to heart. The notices have been posted for more than a dozen years. There are not even 1,000 but 800 brave men who overestimate their own abilities and want to rescue the princess. However, the fact that the notice was still posted there explained the fate of these brave men. The Null camp is not so easy to solve. Otherwise, he would not be left helpless as an earl. What's more, the jackal leader is a powerful monster. I want to kill the leader of the Nulls under the protection of countless Nulls. I am afraid that only legendary level experts can do it easily. Legendary. Count Francis sighed. Such a powerful being is one of the few strong men even in the imperial capital. The status is comparable to those of the great nobles. How could he be so interested in such a small earldom? In comparison, it would be better to find a way to kill that banshee. Although the banshee is powerful, she has a fatal weakness. As long as his soldiers are given a chance, they can easily subdue the banshee. Boom! Suddenly, there was a violent roar, and the sky was dyed red with flames. What happened? The Earl panicked and almost thought it was the banshee from the quiet forest calling. However, after being an earl for so many years, he is no longer the wuxia Aemon he was back then, and he still has some inner feelings. Although his hands were shaking in panic, the expression on his face remained calm. My lord Earl, the noise is coming from the jackal camp. A palace guard ran in a panic. Null camp. Count Francis was slightly startled. Someone just received the trial from the jackal camp, and there was such a big noise there. Is this a coincidence or not? Send someone over immediately to check on the situation. Half an hour later, a knight hurried in. My lord, the gold mine has been razed to the ground, and all the jackals have been wiped out. The knight's face was filled with indescribable horror and fear. It was as if he had seen something extremely terrible. Real. Count Francis stood up immediately and walked around the palace excitedly. Legend, it must be a legendary archmage taking action. It's true that God will never end my kingdom, Francis. After so many years of fishing, he finally caught a big fish. although he didn't know what the strength of that banshee was. But, at best, it is at the level of a legend. If the kingdom of Francis also had a legendary archmage as a backer, not only can the curse on his daughter be lifted, but the threat of the silent forest will no longer exist. Send all the soldiers to look for the brave man who unveiled the notice, and be sure to respectfully invite him to the palace. After strolling around outside for a while, Rhodes, carrying the head of the jackal leader, returned to the castle unhurriedly. The moment he entered the castle, a group of heavily armed soldiers surrounded him. Rhodes raised his eyebrows, wondering if he had offended that big shot. Why such a huge formation? The leader of the soldiers, the captain, took out a piece of drawing paper that was dictated by the artist. Tall and handsome, with a huge axe on his back, as dazzling as the sun, people dare not look directly at it. While muttering quietly, his eyes were scanning Rhodes' whole body. Nearly 2 meters tall, with strong muscles all over his body, the vague pressure brought by it was like facing a distant rising sun. The pure golden one-handed axe exudes a fearsome edge. Looking at the head of the jackal leader in the opponent's hand, the last trace of doubt in the soldier captain's heart disappeared. That's him. The soldier captain put away the painting in his hand and asked cautiously. This brave man, is this the bounty list you just unveiled? It's me. Rhodes nodded strangely. It's just a list, why should we arrest him? After receiving a positive reply, the expression on the soldier commander's face was immediately full of respect, and he bowed slightly. Reach out and make a gesture of invitation. Your Majesty, the Earl would like to invite you to a banquet at the palace, please come with me. A banquet at the palace. Rhodes figured out what was going on after just a moment's thought. As soon as he unveiled the notice, the Null camp was destroyed. Even a smart person can relate to him. Lead the way. Rhodes nodded and said calmly. Knowing that he was going to meet the Earl, he could still be so calm. Was it because he had anticipated this outcome, so he was so calm? You are indeed a brave man. The soldier captain sighed in his heart. Seeing the, as expected of you, expression on the soldier commander's face, Rhodes was confused. Is this guy crazy? Did he say anything? Facts have proved that when a person is on the road to success, even a fart will be misinterpreted to mean 100 different things. This is like a certain great writer who carved the word morning on his desk when he was young. A simple thing will be labeled with various complex arguments. Rhodes even clearly remembers that his Chinese teacher asked him seriously what kind of emotion the author had when he carved the word morning on the table. Does engraving a word also depend on your mood and emotions? That's ridiculous. There are so many students who carve words on their desks when they go to school. A kid with a big butt is still in school, so isn't it just a matter of fun to carve words? I still have to make up a 300 to 500 word noble sentiment for you. What were you thinking? He was escorted onto a carriage by a group of soldiers. Not long after, they arrived outside the palace. After getting off the carriage, a red carpet was spread directly into the palace, with 2 rows of fully armed knights standing on both sides of the carpet. That's almost true. Rhodes pouted. This kind of battle can only deceive those country warriors who have little knowledge. After all, he is also someone who has seen big scenes. Compared with the time when the evil god came, the scene before him could only be regarded as child's play. Master Brave, please. Your Majesty, the Earl is waiting for you in the palace. Rhodes stepped on the red carpet and slowly stepped up the steps of the palace in front of everyone's attention. In the palace, there is a dining table filled with all kinds of delicacies. The nobles in gorgeous clothes sat in their seats and communicated quietly. I don't know why the Earl suddenly summoned them all. The Earl sitting at the head of the table tapped the table nervously and expectantly. The Earl did not speak, and other nobles did not dare to ask. At this moment, a burst of footsteps came. Everyone looked over at the same time, wondering what the identity of this distinguished guest who could be specially waited for by the Earl would be. Could it be a certain nobleman from the imperial capital? Under the spotlight, a figure walked into the palace. Civilian. How can civilians appear in this place? Who let him in? Simple dress, no aristocratic appearance. Full of arrogance, he walks like a king looking down on all living beings. Such an arrogant and rude person has absolutely no basic etiquette among nobles. Looking at Rhodes walking in, all the nobles couldn't help but frown. The look may be disgusting or repulsive. Only the Earl, who was sitting at the head of the table, stood up with excitement. He walked to the palace gate like a little fanboy and personally welcomed Rhodes' arrival. The Earl all stood up to greet him, but no other nobles dared to sit on their seats. One by one, they stood up and followed the Count to greet the commoner who had a humble status in their eyes. Everyone is full of doubts. Why would the Earl greet a commoner so solemnly? Ignoring the strange looks behind him, Earl Francis walked closer and respectfully performed a standard imperial etiquette. In the HRE Empire, most of the nobles are believers of the God of Glory, and they usually greet each other with church etiquette. But the seemingly legendary strong man in front of him was obviously not a believer in the God of Glory. Francis was not surprised. After all, even these nobles are mostly just shallow believers. He shouted that the God of Glory is above. Occasionally donating a few gold coins to the church will make me feel heartbroken. Dear legendary mage, I, the King of the Kingdom of Francis, on behalf of the entire Kingdom of Francis, thank you for your assistance. This simple sentence made the group of nobles behind him freeze in place. Legend. Mage. Either of these two words symbolizes noble status and identity. If on the basis of the mage, add a legendary prefix. That cannot be described as simply noble. Such people are rare in a place like the imperial capital where there are so many powerful people. The status is comparable to that of countless dukes and nobles in the empire. Such a big shot, even the emperor of the Shinra Empire, must treat him with courtesy. What did these low-level nobles, who are not even counts, do in front of a legendary mage? Count it Jill. If you offend a legend, no one will say anything even if he is pressed to death on the spot. The legend cannot be insulted. As long as they are not big nobles who own territories and feudal states above the count. It is simply impossible for the Shinra Empire to punish a legendary strongman for a few low-level nobles. Even if an earl or nobleman is killed, as long as there is a reasonable explanation and reason, it will basically be a big deal and a trivial matter. Is it possible that for the sake of tens of thousands of ordinary people, a legendary mage who is more precious than a giant panda is executed? From an empire's point of view, let alone tens of thousands of civilians and nobles. Even a dozen commoners and nobles cannot compare to the value of a legendary mage. Every legendary mage is a strategic weapon for the empire to deter the other three empires. Its status is comparable to nuclear weapons in the technological age. Nuclear weapons can be manufactured in batches, but the number of legendary mages is limited. Anything less is a huge loss. The status of a legendary mage is not something that minor nobles like them can challenge. Francis took Rhodes directly to the main table. Rhodes sat down on the main seat, and Earl Francis naturally sat on the deputy seat next to him. According to the etiquette of the Shinra Empire, those who can sit on the main seat are usually those with the most distinguished status. If the status of the guest and the host are equal, the host will naturally sit in the main seat. But in front of a legendary mage, don't show off his insignificant status as an empire count. Even if this is his kingdom and castle, it is not his master's turn to take the throne. After Rhodes took office, the banquet with him as the protagonist naturally began. The banquet specially prepared by Earl Francis was naturally not too low grade. Although he was not used to Western food, the taste of the high-quality ingredients was excellent, and Rhodes was very happy with his meal. As for a group of nobles, they seemed very reserved. Almost all of them only dare to eat what is in front of them, and they only tasted briefly. Rhodes looked unappetizing. When the banquet is over, the most critical part comes. Forget being polite, let's get down to business. What is the second test? Rhodes picked up a napkin and wiped his mouth, then said casually. Count Francis didn't take it to heart at all. Legendary strong men all have their own personalities, and their personalities are much worse than this one. In comparison, this legendary mage's temper seemed mild to him. Mr. Rhodes, this second test should not be difficult for you. Count Francis said with a smile. A few months ago, a group of trolls appeared on the border of the kingdom, blocking the largest trade route of the Kingdom of Francis. This second test is to eliminate these trolls. By the way, one of these trolls has a troll leader whose strength is close to the legendary level. A clan of trolls. Rhodes felt a hint of interest. The troll clan is a relatively large race. Its origin can even be traced back to the legendary Titan clan. To be more precise, the trolls are the descendants of the titans, hybrid monsters born from the union of other creatures. However, the ethnic groups of this race are somewhat mixed. Forest troll, mountain troll, one-eyed troll, dark troll, ice troll, ancient troll. There are not 100 kinds, but 70 or 80. The race is diverse, second only to the orcs, which have hundreds of racial groups. However, considering that the fathers of the troll family are giants, it is not unacceptable. The titans, the original creatures in the world, were born in chaos and were born with the power of rules and the mysterious power of chaos. They are one of the very few ancient races known to be able to become gods without faith. Also known as the ancient god. There is no distinction between good and evil or gender among the titans. Most of them do not even have a fixed shape. They are more like an incarnation of rules. Therefore, as the descendants of the Titan family, the giant family is originally strange in shape, such as mountain giants, frost giants, hundred-armed giants, cyclops. Some deformed giants are even as beautiful as evil gods. As the descendants of the ancient gods, the power of the giant family is naturally not weak. A powerful giant whose strength can reach the top demigod level. Even the weaker giants have at least legendary power. Moreover, the giant family can mate with any creature or even the environment to give birth to children. Some giants merged with the forest and gave birth to forest trolls. Combined with the air of the mountains, mountain trolls will be born. There are even storm trolls that were born from the combination of thunder and thunder. Storm trolls have legendary combat power as adults. The strength is even comparable to that of the giant dragon clan. However, the number is quite rare and has not appeared for hundreds of years. Trolls from different groups have completely different living habits and may even fight each other against each other. I wonder what kind of trolls are these trolls in Francis' kingdom. It would be fine if it were a regular troll like a forest troll. If you encounter a rare group like storm trolls whose average combat power is above the legendary level, it's a bit troublesome. However, thinking about it, it shouldn't be possible. The strength doesn't match. And storm trolls like to live in places such as Thunder Valley and the highest peak where storms and thunder gather. Moreover, almost all of the remaining storm trolls have become followers of the storm god. The chance of wild storm trolls appearing here is slim. Sir Rhodes, it's getting late now. We can discuss the test tomorrow. If you don't mind, you can stay one night in the palace. Rhodes looked at the darkening sky. The banquet lasted too long and it was already evening before I knew it. To be on the safe side, let's wait until tomorrow to clear out those trolls. After all, trolls are no ordinary monsters. In front of the trolls, the gnolls are just a bunch of trash. Although it's a bit presumptuous, can you let me see Her Royal Highness? Rhodes said it was presumptuous, but his tone was as if a superior was giving orders to a subordinate. Earl Francis was stunned, and for a moment he didn't even have the courage to refute. Rejecting a legendary mage means facing the other party's anger, or even losing the other party's help. Moreover, according to his promise, the person who passes the 3 tests will be his daughter's future husband. The future king of the kingdom of Francis. It is reasonable to want to meet his future wife. The princess is resting in the dormitory. Lord Rhodes, please come with me. Rhodes followed the count and walked towards the deep part of the castle where the female family members lived. Aurora, are you asleep? The count stood in front of a door and knocked gently. Boom, boom, boom. After a burst of scattered noises, the door was opened. Princess Aurora, with a few drops of sweat on her forehead, hurriedly opened the door. Father, is there something wrong at this late hour? Princess Aurora's breathing was a little disordered. This is Rhodes, a legendary mage who has passed the first test set by his father. If he can pass 3 tests in a row, he will be your future husband. Sir Rhodes, I am Aurora. Aurora pulled her skirt and gave a slight bow. Although I have no idea about the legendary mage. However, looking at the respectful look on her father's face, one could tell that this young man, who is not much older than her, must have a very high status. Sleeping Beauty. Rhodes lifted Princess Aurora's chin slightly frivolously. She really has a beautiful face. This princess was blessed by 3 forest fairies when she was born. He has a perfect figure and appearance, as well as a kind heart. Both appearance and heart are impeccable and perfect. If she hadn't been cursed by a sanctuary banshee, she would definitely be one of the brightest pearls on this road. Fairy is a strange existence born between nature and laws. He has a godlike personality, but has no fighting power. And life is fragile, even ordinary beasts can kill goblins. However, as something favored by the will of the world, anyone who kills the goblin will be cursed by fate and become plagued with bad luck. Therefore, even the gods would not easily punish this creature. Although goblins do not have strong combat power, their blessings and curses cannot be exempted even by gods. However, goblins rarely bless or curse others unless they are destined to be their destiny. This Princess Aurora is a child raised by 3 goblins. It wasn't until he was almost an adult that he was picked up by Count Francis. Sir Rhodes, please respect yourself. Princess Aurora frowned and took a step back subconsciously. Ever since she was a child, except for her father, she had never been in such close contact with a man. If nothing else happens, I should be your future husband. Let's get used to it a little bit in advance. Rhodes smiled casually and looked at the Earl next to him. Lord Earl, can I stay next door tonight? The Count frowned and glanced at him suspiciously. But thinking that a legendary mage would not do anything excessive, he nodded in agreement. Princess Aurora, I wish you a good dream at night. Thank you, you too, Your Excellency. Princess Aurora entered the room as if fleeing. Has the princess always stayed in the castle? Ever since she was brought back from the 3 goblins, she has been staying in the castle. Even the windows in her room have been specially reinforced. There was a hint of worry on Count Francis's face. The Banshee's curse means that this child will be pierced by a spindle when he reaches adulthood and fall into eternal sleep. Although I have ordered all spindles in the entire castle to be destroyed, I still have to be just in case. Even though I knew there was no way to prevent the curse from happening. But this is the only thing he can do. It doesn't matter, I will take action. Rhodes's understatement was filled with unquestionable confidence. The Earl nodded, and his tense mood seemed to relax a lot. At midnight, the door was suddenly opened. Rhodes frowned and looked towards the door. Under the dim light, a beautiful young woman with a slim figure, wearing an exquisite low-cut palace dress, slowly walked in. There was not much blood on the pale face, except for a pair of bright red lips. Mr. Rhodes, can I come in? The woman spoke, her voice magnetic and sexy, like an enchanting cat scratching her heart. Who are you? Countess Francis, the mother of Princess Aurora. I will serve Lord Rhodes tonight. The Countess slowly unfastened the straps of her court dress and took off her corset, revealing that flawless sexy body, etc. Rhodes frowned and raised his hand to stop him. Only then did I remember that debauchery was prevalent among the upper-class nobles. It does seem that there was a custom of having wives and daughters serve distinguished guests. However, this kind of thing usually happens when guests with vastly different statuses stay overnight. Rhodes didn't quite understand it anyway, but this trend was still quite popular in upper-class society. If the host does not show his kindness as a landlord, the guest staying overnight will think that you look down on him. Even if the person you serve is of low status, the other party will consider him to be contemptuous. If the guest does not accept the host's kindness, the host will consider it looked down upon or even insulted. If you really don't want to accept such kindness, it's best to refuse when the host invites you to stay overnight. With his status as a legendary mage, he is equivalent to a noble of the duke level in the empire. Count Francis had no concubines or second daughters, so the only ones qualified as waiters were the princess and the countess. Princess Aurora is the future heir to the kingdom of Francis, and her husband is the king of Francis. Naturally, it is not suitable for such a thing. Therefore, naturally only the countess met the requirements. He understands the truth, but as the future husband of Princess Aurora, is it really okay to do this? First with the countess costume, and later with Princess Aurora. What is this? Rice bowl. Free rice bowl. It doesn't seem like it's his character not to eat. It seems immoral to eat it. Rhodes rubbed his chin and pondered, and finally chose to lie down. Since you don't know how to choose, it's better to mess with it. A few hours later, Rhodes took a shower. She sighed and was worthy of being a countess of noble birth. Knows so much. Semi-automatic is just not as good as fully automatic. He looked out the window. A rope woven from sheets hangs down from the next door window. You can vaguely see a figure climbing down the rope. What a wayward princess. Rhodes sighed. There were only a few days left before Princess Aurora's coming-of-age ceremony. The entire Francis kingdom is preparing for war, preparing to go to war with the Forest of Silence. It was really stupid to run out at this time. The stupid princess sneaks out of the castle, encounters danger in the forest, and meets the destined prince. It's an old-fashioned plot. The flames melted the window and Rhodes jumped out. Taking steps leisurely, he chased in the direction where the princess left. The destined prince. If such a thing existed, he would have nipped the risk in the bud. The prince saves the princess. Fantasy is beautiful, but reality is cruel. He is reality. Who is worthy of taking charge of his life and modifying his script? Not even destiny. The princess left the castle and walked towards the Forest of Silence. The distance between the castle and the forest is very close, and the dense jungle appears in front of you in the blink of an eye. This forest looks weird. Rhodes, who was following behind, frowned. Normal forests are green and full of life. Full of life. However, this forest gave him two completely opposite feelings. There is both vibrant vitality and a dead and gloomy power that envelopes the entire forest. The gray-green forest is filled with a dark tone at first glance. It's like adding a gray filter. Outside the forest, there were layers of thick and sharp thorns, which surrounded the entire forest with water. The gaps between the thorns can barely accommodate a creature the size of a rabbit. Not to mention adults, even children of any age cannot pass. Princess Aurora walked to the edge of the thorns, and the thorns spread out as if they were alive, leaving a passage for one person to pass through. Aurora walked into the forest with cheerful steps. Thorns with magical powers are difficult to deal with. Rhodes followed behind and couldn't help but rub his teeth as he looked at the newly sealed thorn wall. He pulled out the divine axe and fell, encountering some resistance. It was like chopping on a piece of steel. It took a little effort to cut off a thorn. Rhodes had just cut down 2 thorns with his divine axe, before he walked into the forest. The thorns that were cut grew again at an extremely fast speed. No wonder these thorn walls were not cleared. This magical thorn is as hard as steel. Moreover, it grows rapidly and can grow back even if it is cut. The cutting speed is not as fast as the growth speed, so cutting is in vain. I still prefer fighting with people than chopping wood. Rhodes held the one-handed axe and his eyes became slightly serious. Aurora has entered the forest. If you don't follow him quickly, you'll be lost. If she really met a prince or something, wouldn't that mean snatching food from his mouth? Who can bear this? Magic. Critical breakthrough. Terrifying magic power exploded in his body, and Rhodes instantly felt an uncontrollable force pouring into his body. The body expanded rapidly, and the bloody flames transformed by magic power burned crazily around him like real substance. In the blink of an eye, Rhodes, whose body had doubled in size, swung forward with the divine axe in one hand. Boom! With the blessing of Chun Chu's power, the axe blade cut out a terrifying air wave. All the thorns in front of him were directly shattered by the terrifying slash. A huge passage with a diameter of more than 5 meters was exposed. Rhodes held the magic axe and swaggered into the forest. Dead trees, rotting leaves, and the air is filled with the smell of dampness and decay. In the entire forest, there was surprisingly not a trace of green or bright color. Even the flowers are of an underworld color. Dark blue, black, gray. Rhodes followed the footprints on the ground and soon saw the familiar figure from behind. Aurora stood in front of 2 strange big trees, muttering something in her mouth. In the center of the 2 big trees, a powerful natural energy gradually brewed. The secret realm of fairies. Rhodes was a little curious. The goblin's secret realm can be said to be a small world created by the goblin. It can only be opened and entered through special methods. Just as the secret realm was about to open, suddenly, a black cheetah jumped out from a dark corner. In a hurry, Aurora slipped and could only watch helplessly as the cheetah pounced towards her. Aurora screamed and closed her eyes. The pain she imagined did not appear. After a while, Aurora opened her eyes in confusion. A majestic figure stood in front of him, lifting the dangerous Black Panther with one hand. The tall back, full of perfect curves of muscles, seemed to glow under the moonlight. Aurora's breath suffocated, and her heartbeat seemed to speed up a lot. This scene is very similar to the scene in the storybook where the prince saves the princess. Definitely a plot that every woman dreams of. But soon, she felt that this figure looked familiar. Mr. Rhodes. Aurora shouted in disbelief. Little princess, sneaking out alone at night is a bit too much. Rhodes threw the panther away. Aurora was about to speak when she suddenly remembered that this guy should have followed her here. Before she could question him, Rhodes had already taken the lead. I just happened to meet you when I came out to relax. Besides, if it weren't for me, you would have become food for wild beasts by now. Aurora was speechless for a moment and could only say something dull. Thanks. You're welcome. Rhodes responded with a smile. He glanced to the side, then turned his head as if nothing had happened. You can continue now, I have something to take care of. Ignoring what Aurora wanted to say, Rhodes walked directly into the depths of the jungle. Not long after walking out, Rhodes stopped and said expressionlessly, "Come out." Tap tap tap. There was a sound of footsteps behind him, and a handsome man wearing a white dress and a knight's sword at his waist slowly walked out of the darkness. How did you find me? The handsome man looked at Rhodes and asked with some confusion. Probably, it was when you lured the Black Panther here. Rhodes rubbed his chin with a playful look in his eyes. The hero saves the beauty. The strategy is good, but it's a pity that the method is a bit crude. The Black Panther has injuries on its body, and its belly is obviously full. According to the habits of wild beasts, it is almost impossible to hunt at this time. It was not attacking Aurora, but was being driven in this direction to escape. Rhodes shook his head, the expression on his face was indescribably weird. He thought that he would meet the prince in the forest, but he didn't expect that he would still be a scheming boy. As soon as they entered the forest, they were attacked by wild beasts. There is no such coincidence in the world. But if it is a prince, in order to win the heart of the princess, he devises a method. That's easy to explain. A princess who has never left the castle, never seen the world, and was raised by goblins since she was a child. Saved by heroes in times of crisis. If this hero still has the characteristics of being handsome, young and wealthy, it's hard not to commit yourself to him. It's a pity that this pearl of the northern kingdoms has been targeted by him. It is doomed to tragedy for everyone. Very smart. The man admired softly. But, so what if I see it, you will die here soon. And I, the great legendary swordsman, son of Marquis Louis, will appear as a hero to save the cursed princess. Become the new king of this country. Legendary swordsman. No wonder he is so arrogant. Rhodes saw that a man who was no more than 30 years old could practice swordsmanship to a legendary level at this age. To a certain extent, he should be considered a talent. Unfortunately, the road is narrow. It is not good to fight with anyone, you have to dance on the head of the king of hell. The son of a marquis, I'm afraid he's a who can't even be called a second son. Rhodes's faint words caused a ferocious expression on the man's face. The world is deeply divided between classes. The son of a marquis, if he is the eldest son of the first heir, will only marry the daughter of a marquis of the same status. Marriage between nobles of the same class is beneficial to both families. If a marquis marries the daughter of an earl, it is basically equivalent to helping the poor. Not only do you get no benefit, but you also end up sticking it inside. For nobles, the continuity of the family is above all else. The probability of this happening is extremely slim. Unless there are only female heirs left in the family and a son-in-law needs to be selected to inherit the family, the conditions will be relaxed. Otherwise, even the second son must at least marry the second daughter who is also a marquis. Only after the second son, those heirs who have no inheritance rights and are even regarded as a thorn in the eyes of the eldest son, will marry low-level nobles. They had no inheritance rights and could receive nothing from their family except a surname. After reaching adulthood, they will be expelled from the family. Although he is said to be a noble, he is actually not recognized by the aristocratic class at all. You wanna die. The man, who had clearly been told something that was on his mind, became angry and rushed towards Rhodes. We plan to settle old and new grudges together. He traveled thousands of miles across mountains and rivers to come here from the kingdom of Louis, and accidentally heard about Princess Aurora's deeds from the troubadour. Although he is a legendary strongman, he is not a swordsman but a mage. There is no lofty status like a mage. If you want to get a legitimate earl title from the Shinra Empire and build your own fiefdom and castle, you need to spend a lot of time and energy. Therefore, he thought of a tricky way to become a count recognized by the empire. That is, marrying the daughter of an earl. Most of the aristocracy had numerous heirs, but there were many nobles like Earl Francis who had only one daughter as their heir. After all, having a child is not something that can be solved if you have the strength and status. Many nobles have been busy all their lives in reproducing offspring, but in the end they cannot change the fate of having only daughters. As long as he can marry such a princess, he will naturally become the heir to the earl. Why are stories about ordinary heroes and princesses so popular? It's because there are too many instances. He made many choices, and among these nobles, he selected Aurora, the princess who he thought was the easiest to win. Unexpectedly, the guy in front of him solved the jackal camp in advance the day before he arrived at the kingdom of Francis. Even he would have to spend a lot of energy to deal with the Null camp with thousands of people. The only person who could solve it so easily could only be a legendary mage. Although he is a legendary swordsman, his status cannot be compared with the legendary mage. Even if he didn't want to admit it, he had no chance of winning in fair competition. But now the opportunity has come. As long as this guy is dealt with, everything will go back to his plan. Even a legendary mage will die if he is attacked by me at such a close range. A fierce light flashed in Louis' eyes. His handsome face was slightly distorted. No matter how powerful the mage is, he cannot avoid a weakness. That is, the weakness of one's own strength. Compared to the physique of a legendary swordsman who has been tempered for thousands of times, the mage's physique is too fragile even if he becomes a legend. If you were to get close to him, you would definitely die. Who told you that I am just a legendary mage? Rhodes looked at the legendary swordsman who attacked him with a blank expression. Slowly raised the divine axe in his hand. Magic power snatched. Critical breakthrough. Louis, holding the knight's sword, felt a sudden weakness in his body. His physique and strength seemed to have been cut in half at the waist, and were constantly being lost. It was as if something had taken it away. Heavy chop. With the blessing of double power, the axe raised by Rhodes fell like lightning and fell instantly. The legendary physique obtained by force, coupled with the blessing of critical breakthrough power. The power of his attack is invincible in the Holy Realm. Call. The sharp edge of the divine axe swept up a terrifying wave of air. A large piece of forest disappeared completely, as if it had been wiped out from this world. The ground was bare, leaving only a huge hole dozens of meters deep into the ground. Everything on the ground was crushed to pieces by the power of this axe. The terrifying power spread to the sky, and a huge gap was cut into the thick dark clouds. The sparse moonlight fell, and the dark forest seemed to become much brighter. As for the prince who claims to be the son of a marquis, if he digs through the ruins carefully, he might be able to find some leather residue. Risks should be completely eradicated from the cradle. Having dealt with this potential contender, Rhodes was in a good mood. What bullshit is destiny, world correction? This kind of trash should be killed one by one. Kill until no one dares to come close. Facts have proved that strength is the only truth in this world. As long as he is so powerful that even the gods can't do anything about him, then he is invincible. Stretching, he turned around and walked out of the forest. With such a loud noise, the sanctuary banshee in the forest must have heard it too. However, now is not the time to start a war with her. If he kills this banshee and breaks the curse, it will be a huge loss. Faced with a legendary archmage, Count Francis probably wouldn't dare to deny it. However, it would still be quite troublesome if you find a way to postpone it. Come back after completing the second test. Anyway, the banshee is in the forest and won't run away. He still has time to take his time, or at worst wait for the curse on Princess Aurora to take effect. When the time comes, even if he doesn't want to, Francis will beg him to help the princess exorcise the demon. Cultivate feelings. No need at all. It's a home run right out of the gate. Let's talk about love after doing it. It won't be too late to slowly talk about feelings with the princess in the future. Thanks for watching, subscribe and support my channel.